Hi there, my name is Lisa, but everybody calls me Lou. And today I want to try something I think might turn into a little series here on the channel, which is revisiting my knits 1 year later. So I thought it would be fun to sit down and go back to my spring 2025 knits now that I've had a full year to actually live in them. I'm going to go through each piece and talk about the yarn I used, any modifications I made, how it's held up over time, and most importantly, whether I actually wear it, if I would make it again, and what I might change. And I think it sounds fun to give each piece a little rating just based on how much it actually worked for me over the past year. But also looking at them now, they are not the most springy knits, but they are the ones I finished around that time, so I feel like they still belong together in a way. So let me put my water down and let's start with the first project I finished past spring, which was my traveler hoodie. This is a pattern by Andrea Mowry, and it is the only hoodie I have in my wardrobe, whether it's hand knit or not. And I don't think I will be adding any more garments to this category. I've used 2 strands of Host Garn Super Soft for this project, which is such a light fingering weight yarn that even holding it double, it still worked, even though the pattern calls for a sport weight yarn. And I like this piece. I made mine really oversized, at least for what I'm used to. So it's extra long, it's cozy. This really dark yarn color is divine. But this hoodie is also a furnace. It is so heavy, not only in weight, but also in the thickness of the fabric, that I only wear it when it's really cold or if I don't feel like turning the heat up. I've worn it a few times since finishing it and it does feel really nice, no complaints whatsoever. But I wanted to wear it more just because it is so comfy. I'm just afraid of sweating in this thing as soon as I'm out the door, so I don't. Now, so far, when it comes to the yarn, it looks exactly the same as the day I finished it. I've never depeeled it or anything, but one thing I did notice is that this yarn really benefits from a good soak. Every time I washed or blocked it, it came out a little bit softer than before. But I still wouldn't call it soft. It is definitely fine next to skin. It is not rustic either, at least not for me. But keep in mind, I don't have sensitive skin. The only modification I made to this pattern was not actually modification, but I added these little end pieces here to the tips of the drawstrings, and I think they really elevated the look. I still don't know if these pieces are plastic or metal. So every time this hoodie goes in for a bath, I leave the ends hanging out of the water just to be safe. Now the construction of the hood was also really nice to knit and it actually looks good just hanging at the back. When I'm wearing it, it has enough structure that I don't have to keep adjusting it to make it sit nicely, which is really important for me. The only real issue I have with this piece is that the hood is quite heavy, or at least mine is, so it makes the front neckline here ride up a bit. So I always find myself pulling on the collar to create a bit more space around my neck. I just can't wear anything too close to my neck, and it is kind of annoying to keep pulling on my sweater all the time. Now, would I make this again? I think I would, especially if I lost mine, but maybe choose a different yarn just to get a lighter garment that I could wear more often. But overall, I really like the final piece. The texture is fun, it is easy to knit. I had a lovely time making it. So, yeah, I think I would make it again. Now, would I recommend the yarn? I think so. One ball goes a long way. This yarn has a good price point. The color range is really nice. And at least so far, the finished knit is holding up well. I just don't see this as a true fingering weight yarn. It almost feels like lace weight on the needles. So I don't know how I feel about using this yarn just held single for a fingering weight project. I also used this yarn in another project held together with one strand of mohair, and I really liked that combination. It definitely helped in the softness department. So for this one, I think I would give it a 9, maybe 8.5 out of 10 stars, just because of how heavy this hood is. It is very cozy, but also a bit limiting in terms of when I can actually wear it. And I think that's a nice seg into something that ended up being much easier to wear in everyday life, which was the second knit I finished last spring, the Daily Stripes cardigan by Veronika Lindberg. This was the second cardigan I made for myself, and also the project that kicked off my love for stripy garments. I was really excited to try unspun yarn at the time, so I chose Eastex Plotolopi in these two colorways. I felt like going with a simple project was the safer choice for trying out unspun yarn, and that's how this cardigan came to be. This pattern is from the Knits to Wear book by Veronika Lindberg, who is one of my favorite designers, and it was my first time knitting from a book. I didn't really know what to expect because I've heard people say that patterns in books can be a little less detailed due to space limitations, but I didn't have any issues with this one. Now, that said, this is a relatively simple project, just dropped shoulder, double knit button band, and stripes. So I don't know if I would feel differently had I chosen something more complex with charts and things like that to follow from a book. Now, I wear this cardigan regularly. I'd say maybe once or two times a week, and it is surprisingly okay next to skin to a certain extent. The yarn definitely has a rustic texture that's undeniable, so I was a bit worried it would be too much to wear without a long sleeved layer underneath, but it is actually fine. Most of the time, I wear it with just a t shirt, and that works just fine. But after a few hours, especially if I'm at home, I've definitely caught myself thinking maybe I should change into something comfier really quick. So the rustic texture does play a role, especially if I'm leaning on something like my desk, then I really start to feel this texture, especially here around my elbow. And I am pretty happy with the fit overall, especially the sleeves. The only thing I don't love is how the fabric bunches slightly here at the back of the neck. It sits a bit high, not enough to make it uncomfortable, but enough that I notice it. But at the same time, it is at the back, so I don't see it, so it's okay. And I think this is just me being picky. And I also found the perfect buttons for this cardigan to match this rust color. And I'm almost certain I've sewed them on with regular sewing thread first and then went through the holes again with the unspun yarn just to match the button band. So far, no buttons have come off, thankfully, and the buttonholes are holding up really well too. I don't fully know yet how this cardigan will hold up long term because unspun yarn is still a mystery to me, but so far it hasn't been an issue. Now, would I recommend this pattern? Yes, I had a lovely time knitting it, no problems at all, and the small fit detail at the back, it's really just me being picky, like I said. At the same time, I'm not super excited to work with unspun yarn again. The only real issue I had was during the Italian bind off. There was a complete nightmare. The yarn kept breaking every couple of stitches. I would 1000% not recommend doing Italian bind off with unspan yarn, but I love the look of an Italian bind off, so I think that's why I'm not that excited to work with unspan yarn again. The 1x1 ribbing also doesn't look the neatest, but I can live with it. The fuzz of this yarn kind of hides most of the inconsistencies anyway, so I think I'm fine with that. Overall, I think I give this knit an 8 out of 10 stars just because of the scratchiness of the yarn and the tiny issue with the back neck. Now, enough about this project and let's go to the next one because this one, on the other hand, went in a bit of a different direction. This is the, let me get it here. This is the Belle and Sebastian Pullover by Sari Nordlund, and this is probably the biggest modification I've ever made to a pattern, and it is also kind of meh. This pattern is written for a drop shoulder construction, but I didn't love how the design looked at the top of the sleeves here where they meet the body. So I had this very ambitious idea to turn it into a, I don't even know how to call it, maybe satin sleeve, something like that. Knitting the body was fine, no issues, but once I got to the sleeves, I felt like I needed short rows here to shape the sleeve cap, and it took me a while to figure out a way to do that nicely. I kept messing up the turning stitches, and it was really annoying, if I'm being honest. Eventually, I got it to work, and I actually think I would love this project if I had chosen a different yarn. I used Gepard Garn Woollia, which is an Aran weight yarn, merino wool, and I've heard so many people rave about this yarn, but I'm just not one of them. This yarn is not for me. Even in the skein, I didn't love the texture. It didn't really feel like wool to me, more like synthetic fiber, which would be completely fine if that was what I was going for, but it wasn't. And once it was knitted up, that feeling became even more noticeable. So, double the frustration, and maybe pairing it with one strand of mohair would change that, make it a little bit softer. But at this point, I'm a bit hesitant to try it again. Maybe I'm being too harsh because I know a lot of people love this yarn, but I just had a completely different experience with it. Now, yarn issues aside, this was my first time knitting a Sari Nordlund pattern, and I actually really liked her writing style. It took me a few minutes to get used to it, yes, but once it clicked, it was great. Now, fit wise, there are two things I don't love: the sleeves and the collar. I went up 2 sizes for the sleeves because they looked a bit snug in the pattern photos, and I still wish I had gone even bigger. I don't even know if there was a larger size available, but I probably could have figured something out. And then with the color, this might be because of the sleeve modification, but it doesn't really sit flat. It kind of sticks out here, almost vertical, parallel to my neck when I'm wearing this sweater, and it bothers me so much. Because of all of that, I almost never wear this sweater, which is honestly really frustrating. This should have been my biggest success of 2025 because of this sleeve modification, and instead it's my biggest flop by far. Now, would I knit this again? Maybe. If I could fix the fit issues, especially when it comes to the color. But emotionally, it's hard to get excited about it because I just can't get past this yarn choice. Now, looking purely at the pattern though, yes, I would recommend it. I think it's a lovely pattern. But now the rating, oh boy, this one is probably a 5 out of 10 stars. Is that too harsh? Maybe a 6? I don't like the yarn. I have issues with the fit. I almost never wear it. So, yeah, this one was a bit of a frustrating experience overall. But thankfully, the next sweater was kind of the complete opposite because I finished my Lyon sweater by PetiteKnit and I love this guy. This sweater is pretty much perfect. I used two strands of knitting for olive merino throughout, no mohair, and it was my first time using this yarn. I had high expectations because everyone seems to love it, and let me tell you, it did not disappoint. It is really soft, really nice to the touch, and the color range is incredible. But I do wish they had one or two darker pink options. But I can absolutely get past that because I wear this sweater all the time, at least 2 times a week, and I've never had to depil it. And it looks brand new. Yes, every now and then I see a tiny bit of fluff, especially here under the arms, but I just pinch it off in a second and it looks brand new again. I also love this shoulder construction. It gives such a flattering fit and a really modern look, especially with the stripes. It is a petite knit pattern, so no issues at all with the construction. And I didn't make any modifications here as far as I can remember. And the fit is just so good. I've actually used this sweater as a reference for almost every project I've made since. The body length, sleeve length, the amount of ease, the color, I just love everything about my Lyon sweater. And one very important thing about this yarn that I almost forgot is that even one by one ribbing looks good in it. For me, one by one ribbing can be very hit or miss depending on the yarn. And with this one, chef's kiss. Now, would I make it again? 100%, 1000%. In every possible color combination. This is definitely one of my favorite projects from 2025, and I wouldn't change a single stitch. And would I use this yarn again? I mean, that's not even a question at this point. This one is honestly as close to perfect as it gets for me. So I'd give this project a 10 out of 10 stars. I'd give it 11 if I could. Now let's go to the last piece I worked on past spring. And this one was a bit different. I worked on the Thru Lines show by Andrea Mowry. I have it folded in half here just because it is so big, but this is my Thru Lines show, and I feel like this is one of those pieces I should reach out for more than I actually do. I made this because I wanted something quite neutral and dark, but with a little bit of color in it, and I really loved the mosaic color work in this pattern. It is so much less stressful than stranded color work, which I really appreciated while knitting it. This shawl features some ribbing detail in between the mosaic stripes, but I can barely see it in person with this black yarn that I chose, and the I-cord edging gives a nice finishing to the shawl that I really appreciate. This was also my first time using this yarn. I chose BC Garn Bio Shetland for this project in 3 different colorways, and I actually ended up loving it. It is quite thin and light, but one skein goes such a long way. The price point is really good. There's a good color range, and even though it is not the softest yarn, it's surprisingly nice next to skin, which says a lot for something that's constantly around your neck. In fact, I already used this yarn for 2 other projects. One was a clutch I worked on over the summer, and the other one was a hat I finished this past winter. And the funny thing about this one is that I didn't make any modifications, but I kind of accidentally did because I didn't do a mid project block to check the length, and it ended up being almost 3 meters long once it was finished, which means I don't wear it in the spring because it just feels like a lot. But in the winter, I actually reach for it quite a bit because I can wrap it around my neck multiple times and it ends up being really cozy despite how light it is. The only thing I'm not a huge fan of is that the edges curl a little bit here, where the I cord is, even after blocking, it is nothing dramatic, but it's there, and it kind of annoys me a bit, but not enough to make me not reach for it when I go out. I think if I were to make this again, I definitely would, but I would 100% keep track of the length as I go. And I would recommend the pattern as well. Andrea Mowry's patterns are always really straightforward and easy to follow, and the final piece is also easy to wear most of the time, which is really important for me. I just need to get better at actually styling shows. That's still a work in progress for me. So I think this is like a 9 out of 10 stars for me. Just because of how long it is, I feel a bit limited in terms of when I can wear it, but it's really nice next to skin. It's really pretty. So, yeah, let's go with 9 out of 10 stars. And those were all the projects I worked on during spring of 2025. It was actually really interesting to see how different these feel now compared to when I had just finished them. Some of these became real staples in my wardrobe, and others I still like them, I just don't reach for them as much as I thought I would. And I think I want to keep doing this, going back to my needs a year later and seeing what actually lasted and what didn't. It feels like a much more honest way of looking at the things I make. So next time I'll probably do the same with my summer needs, which might be a completely different story. Thank you so much for watching and spending some time with me. And if you enjoyed this video and feel like sticking around, I would love for you to subscribe and give this video a like. It really supports my channel and I really appreciate it. I'll see you next week with a fresh new podcast episode, and until then, happy knitting. Bye!